All right, let's dive right into a scientific detective story that's been 500 years in the making. It's got one of history's greatest minds, a pretty simple experiment with a block of wood, and a number that had scientists scratching their heads for centuries.
So here's the big question we're tackling today. We're going to look at how Leonardo da Vinci, that Da Vinci, was one of the very first people to really scientifically study friction. And his results were so consistently weird that it took a modern-day recreation to finally figure out what he was actually seeing.
And it all starts right here with this sketch from one of his notebooks. Now you gotta remember, this is way before Isaac Newton ever formalized the idea of force. Leonardo was already getting his hands dirty, meticulously studying the resistance that objects face. He sets up this simple but honestly brilliant experiment. You've got a block, a pulley, a rope, and some weights. His goal? To put a number on friction, to turn it from just an idea into something you can actually measure.
What is just mind-blowing is how far ahead of his time he was. From this little setup, he figured out 3 things. First, if you double the weight on the block, you double the friction. Makes sense. Second, the size of the surface touching doesn't matter. A block on its big flat side has the same friction as that same block on its skinny end. Now, these first 2 were confirmed by other scientists centuries later, and they are literally textbook laws of friction now. But it was his third finding that created this whole mystery.
He found that the coefficient of friction, which is just a fancy term for how grippy 2 surfaces are, was always, consistently, 1/4, or 0.25. Not just one time. He got this number again and again. For any scientist, a number that consistent is a huge deal. But for modern physicists looking back at his notes, it just seemed, well, too low, way too low. So what was going on? To solve this, we need to do a super quick refresher on what friction even is.
So, let's just quickly cover the basics. This is the groundwork we need to really appreciate how brilliant the solution to Da Vinci's puzzle actually is.
At its core, friction is just the force that resists motion when surfaces are touching. You push a box, friction pushes back. You walk down the street, friction is what keeps you from slipping. It always pushes in the opposite direction you're trying to go. But, and this is important, there's a crucial difference in the type of friction.
This graph shows you the 2 faces of friction. Think about it like this. You're pushing a heavy sofa across the room. The hardest part is just getting it to budge, right? That initial oomph you need, that's you overcoming static friction. But once it's sliding, it gets a little easier to keep it going. That's because you've switched to fighting kinetic friction, which is almost always lower.
So the big takeaway is this. Static friction is that stubborn force you have to beat to get something moving in the first place. Kinetic friction is the lesser force you fight once it's already sliding. Da Vinci, with his weights and pulley, he was measuring that peak static friction, that exact moment the block first started to move.
Okay, so with that science under our belts, a modern team of scientists decided to do the impossible. Jump in a time machine. Well, not really. They decided to faithfully recreate Da Vinci's 500-year-old experiment to see if they could get the same results.
And here it is. On the left, you see his original, incredible sketch. And on the right, the beautiful modern recreation. They built it using the same kinds of woods, following his design as closely as they possibly could. It's like a tangible link across 5 centuries of science, sitting right there on a lab bench.
Now, they did make a few modern upgrades. To make sure they were only measuring the friction of the block, they built the wooden pulley with high-precision modern ball bearings hidden inside. This basically eliminated any friction from the pulley itself, which let them zero in on just the friction between the block and the surface, a level of control Da Vinci could only have dreamed of.
Okay, so we've got the setup. A historical experiment recreated with modern precision. The stage is totally set for the big reveal. And the answer, funny enough, was found in the one place modern scientists are trained to eliminate: imperfection. A little bit of a mess.
So here's the key question. The researchers started out by doing what any good scientist would do. They sanded the wood perfectly smooth, and they cleaned the surfaces obsessively before every single trial. So what do you think they found? What was that coefficient of friction?
It was 0.72. Whoa! That's almost 3 times higher than Da Vinci's 0.25. This didn't solve the mystery, it made it even deeper. The more perfect and clean they made the experiment, the further away they got from Leonardo's result. So, was Da Vinci just wrong, or was something else entirely going on?
This slide, right here, this is the whole story. The scientists were getting frustrated. They tried everything, but nothing worked. Then, they decided to try being less careful. They used roughly cut wood. They stopped cleaning it between trials. They handled it with their bare hands, let workshop dust settle on it. And all of a sudden, a second cluster of data points popped up on their graph, way, way down low.
The data laid it all out. The results from the smooth, clean, perfect surfaces, an average friction coefficient of 0.72. The results from the rough, sullied, or, dirty, dusty, handled surfaces, the average was 0.25, the exact same number Leonardo da Vinci had recorded 500 years earlier.
The conclusion was just so elegant. Da Vinci wasn't wrong at all. He was a brilliant experimentalist who was perfectly measuring the world exactly as he found it. His workshop wasn't a sterile, modern clean room. It was a dusty, active Renaissance studio. The oils from his hands, the microscopic wood dust in the air, it all acted as a kind of natural lubricant. His number wasn't an error. It was a perfect snapshot of his reality.
And Da Vinci's dirty experiment isn't just a fun piece of history. It's an amazing reminder that friction is a real-world force, not just some number in a textbook. It's this constant push and pull in our lives, and we spend a ton of time and energy trying to control it.
I mean, think about it. We rely on maximizing friction every single time we hit the brakes, use a clutch, or just walk down the street without slipping and falling. But at the same time, we're constantly fighting to minimize it with things like lubricants and ball bearings in our engines and machines, all to make them more efficient. It's this non-stop balancing act between friend and foe.
And this brings us right back to the man who started it all. This quote just shows how clearly he got it. He didn't just see something happening. He quantified it, he found the relationship, and he laid the groundwork for centuries of engineering that followed.
So, the next time you see a little dust settling on a surface, maybe you'll think of Da Vinci's experiment. And it kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. What other simple, everyday forces that we totally take for granted are hiding some deep, fascinating complexity, just waiting for us to look a little closer?